Welcome to another installment of Ask a Christian Strength Coach. Today, 5 hard-hitting questions all around getting strong, building muscle, and really just leveling up your physique. In the vein of Thanksgiving, it's everybody's favorite time to put on weight. So we're gonna try to figure out how we can put on weight without putting on a lot of body fat. The average person, men and women, eat around 10,000 calories for Thanksgiving dinner. It's kind of ridiculous. And during the holiday season, from Thanksgiving all the way to New Year's, the average American, I'm gonna say American here, gains about 15 pounds, 10 to 15 depending on gender, of body fat or just scale weight in general. And then we spend the rest of the year trying to diet off that same 10 to 15 pounds. But if we could be getting 10 to 15 pounds of beef, of actual muscle, it would be a lot easier time getting and staying lean. So let's learn a little bit about maybe some mistakes that I've made and some lessons I've learned over the 15 plus year career that I've had as a strength coach and as a bodybuilder at a very high level, coaching hundreds of men to not just gain muscle, but lose a ton of body fat and become the strongest version of themselves. So let's dive in. We've got 5 listener questions. Make sure that you comment below for your question, because we do these every single week, and I pull from YouTube comments, I pull from Instagram, follow us at FitCoupleU, and from Facebook, my personal Facebook, which is Timothy Glenn Cruz. It's my government name. And from that, we just draw 5 questions, so that way I can keep it to a pretty short time frame. So make sure to drop your questions. Also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the things that YouTube wants you to do for the algorithm, because my heart is truly to reach Christian men and help you become the strongest version of yourself, but more importantly, live in alignment with what God has for you on this earth as a man, as a father, as a leader of your family and your community. So let's dive in. Without further ado, again, I'm not gonna say the names because it always makes me feel weird. So first question that I have here, if you see me looking over, because I've got a desktop over here, I'm super tech savvy. I'm joking, but this is my way of remembering my notes. And also I don't write that well, so my handwriting is terrible. I missed a great opportunity to be a doctor. So I type it up and put it on my notes so I can actually read it. So first question, why can I lift heavier every year but still look the same? What am I missing that actually makes muscles grow? So this is actually really common. And this was a camp that I fell into for a freaking long time. So I came up more in the athletic world, more of the strongman, powerlifting domain. And I actually did see pretty high body weights at that time. Like the heaviest I got back then was like 275, but I was probably 25% body fat, if I'm being honest. But I was strong as an ox. Like best lifts at the time, deadlift, I hit 715, not in a meet, so it didn't count, but 715 in the gym. Squat, which was at a meet, was 685, and bench was 495. That was before the good old pec tear, which took me out of bench pressing, which really hurt my ego. But as I was going through that process, I did not build as much muscle as you would think. And this is something that we have to come to grips with, is that in order to put on muscle tissue, it is almost the vast majority of that comes from the way that we eat. And the training stimulus is really just the button that we push to tell our body what to do with those nutrients. It's kind of sucks because, you know, my ego wants to say the harder I work, the more muscle I build. But a really good example of this is if you look at just like the top level power lifters, they're strong as hell. And if you've ever trained around them or seen them train, they train brutally hard. Like they put in so much time and work into the gym, it's not even funny. And they definitely go places that bodybuilders do not go. But if you contrast that with the best bodybuilders in the world, the muscle mass, not the scale weight, but the muscle mass is substantially different. Even if we look at the natural side of things, right? We're talking about like, you know, IFBB pros who are all sauced up versus, you know, like the natural pros that are bodybuilders. Their lean body mass compared to the natural counterpart powerlifters is substantially different. And the way that their physique looks is substantially different. They generally don't train as hard. They generally don't do crazy stuff in the gym like the powerlifters do. But their eating is so maniacal, meaning every gram is accounted for. So once I started to adopt this mentality of, hey, this is almost exclusively warfare of nutrition. And the training needs to be on point, just mostly because we need a stimulus to tell our body to continue to grow. But it's really kind of a wide range. You need to train hard enough to get the stimulus. It's like a button. Once you have enough pressure, like I've always heard of it like kind of like an elevator. You push the button, you have to put so much pressure on that button for the elevator. The light turns on, the elevator comes. Pushing it harder or pushing it more times doesn't necessarily bring the elevator to you any faster, or have the elevator doesn't get bigger. So we just need to have enough training intensity, enough volume, enough stimulus to send the signal to the body to grow. But then everything else is nutrition and rest. So once I started to adopt that, like my body just morphed. And we're talking over the course of about 7-ish years, I've put on close to 80 pounds of actual stage weight, meaning my first competition, I was about 172. And honestly, like if I look at it today as a coach, I'm like, you weren't in shape. You were about 8 weeks out to this last competition, right around 223. If my math fails me, that's about 50 something pounds, not 70. So I'm an athlete, not a mathlete, right? But regardless, a lot of stage weight, a lot of tissue. And my lifts now are nowhere near what they were when I was powerlifting and doing strongman. So take that for what it's worth, but nutrition is everything. Nutrition is absolutely everything. And then having the prerequisite rest to make sure that your body is recovering enough, not just to recover from the training session, but actually adapt and get bigger. So that's what I would say to, if you're lifting hard and heavy and getting stronger, but you're not growing, it's the food side of thing. All right, question number 2. How much protein does a grown man actually need to build muscle? Because everyone says something different, and I'm tired of guessing. Yes, I've heard the same thing. A lot of people say different things about this. You have the RDA, right, which is the recommended daily allowance, which will tell you you need something like 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. For me, that's like, I don't know, 130 grams of protein a day. I can promise you that's not nearly enough. Then you have the whole other side of the spectrum, the Milo Starshev style, the Chad Nichols style, the old school bros who say you need minimum of 2 grams of protein per body pound. Also a little bit ridiculous. That would be roughly, I'm 250-ish right now, so that'd be like 500 grams of protein for me minimum. I can tell you that my guts and my wife would hate me if I ate 500 grams of protein per day. And I've tried both ends of the spectrum. And what I've came down to for myself, and this is also very much supported in the sports nutrition literature, which is actually where I got my master's degree in, is right around that 1 gram of protein per body pound, but it can range all the way to about 1.5. So for me, when I'm working with an athlete or a person who's trying to put on muscle, I like to start at the low end of that spectrum. Meaning if you're a 200-pound male, I'll start you right around 200 grams of protein broken into at least 4, probably 5 or 6 feedings throughout the day. And then over time, I will slowly titrate that up. And the reason I do that versus starting at the high end of the spectrum is because if you jump from eating low protein or not enough protein to even a gram to 1.5 grams per pound, sometimes your gut does not like it. It takes adaptation to really bump up protein intake. The things you'll see if you jump too high too fast is you'll give a lot of diarrhea. Like it'll give a crazy flushing effect. Your farts will be terrible. You'll feel distended and bloated. But if you slowly work your way up to it, it'll absolutely be beneficial. I've seen the best gains in myself and my clients around, if I'm being honest, like around that 1.2, 1.3 grams of protein per body pound. So again, using that same 200-pound male as an example, that'd be roughly 200 grams of protein all the way to maybe 250, 260. And again, broken up over at least 4 to 6 feedings throughout the day. So that way we're getting bolus doses throughout the day versus, anchoring like Americans like 3 throughout the day. Because it's not just the total volume, it's also the volume per meal. Not that you won't absorb it, but imagine having like a 20-ounce steak, which is a good chunk of protein, but nowhere near what you need for the day. That is gonna wreak havoc on your gut versus doing 2 to 3 servings of steak throughout the day. Gonna be a lot easier to digest. And we do have to think about digestibility and how our gut health really is. So long story short, about 1 gram at the low end, all the way up to maybe 1.5 grams per body pound of body weight per day, broken up over 4 to 6 solid feedings. And I should note that this is gonna be coming from high quality, full amino acid profile protein sources. So good example would be obviously meat, right? Steak, chicken, turkey, fish. Those things are amazing. We also can use things like egg whites, whole eggs. We can use dairy products such as Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. Those are all amazing. The dairy side, if you have a little bit of a lactose problem, probably don't go there. But then we can also use supplemental forms too, right? So like whey protein. I do 2 shakes a day of whey protein isolate. I do have a lactose intolerance. I have Crohn's disease, so I can't be too funky with things. So I only use whey isolate, but if you don't have that, you can use whey concentrate. Very high bioavailability, very full amino acid profile, very good for building muscle. And the other thing you want to look for is what's the leucine content, which is an amino acid that actually is the trigger or the stimulus for muscle protein synthesis, which is the machinery that causes our skeletal muscle to grow. So we need enough leucine, we need enough total protein, and we want all of that protein to come from high quality sources. Again, meat, dairy, eggs, egg whites, and then you can obviously use supplemental forms such as whey protein isolate, whey protein concentrate. So that's my short answer to a very, very convoluted topic right now. All right, number 3, is creatine actually worth it, or is it just another supplement scam? And I still get asked this question multiple times a week by men and by women. And I thought we were done with the creatine conversation. I'll give you a quick little story. When I was in high school, I was 18, about to go to college. I wanted to hop on creatine. I had caught the iron bug and I really wanted to get swole. So I told my mom, I'm gonna get some creatine. And at the time, the best ads, if you remember, was from Cell Tech Hardcore. It was by a company called Muscle Tech, and they had this. They always had the craziest before and after photos on their ads. Professional bodybuilders, and they're like, "Oh, look, I gained 50 pounds of muscle taking Cell Tech Hardcore." And you're like, "Well, now I know that's bullshit." But like at the time, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's all I'm missing. It wasn't the diet, it wasn't the training, it's the Cell Tech. I need the Cell Tech." So my mom was very concerned that I was going to take steroids. So she made me write her a full research paper on creatine, and with peer review, like friggin' all like medical, like sources cited, bibliography, just as you would turn in for a research paper in college. So I did that. And even back then, there were hundreds of studies on creatine. Creatine has been studied up the wazoo, down the wazoo for longer than I've been alive. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with creatine at all. It is absolutely the most studied supplement for one, but it's also a very efficacious supplement as well for muscle protein, for growth, for muscle growth, as well as for performance, meaning it does increase strength endurance, things like that. And recently, within the last few years, we've had a lot of research come around that substantiates its ability to mitigate mental decay, I would say. So things like attenuating Alzheimer's, dementia, any neurodegenerative disorders like that. It has a very profound effect within the brain as well. So yes, creatine is absolutely a good supplement. It's also really cheap. Don't fall for the scams. It should be just creatine monohydrate. It should be fairly ubiquitous, meaning it should be very cheap, very easy to source. It's not faked a lot. But is it a game changer? I think that's the actual question. No, it's not. Over food, over training, over proper rest and lifestyle, creatine is not going to move the needle that far. But if you're looking for that extra little bit, it will absolutely help. You'll notice a rep or two more in the gym. You'll notice a little bit more muscular fullness because those creatine phosphate stores get a little fuller. So you get kind of like this almost like swollen, pumped up muscle look. Nothing like when you get done with training, but just, a couple percent. So it is noticeable. And you'll see the scale weight go up by a couple pounds just from simply storing more water inside the cell, which I need to dispel that myth. Creatine does make you hold water, but you hold water inside the muscle cell where you actually want it, where it's most anabolic. So yes, use creatine, but if it means not eating properly, if you're gonna trade dollars, always go for food first. Food is gonna be number one. A quality gym membership is right there with it. Make sure that you have a good place to train with a good environment and good atmosphere, a good place that you can actually train hard. And then if you have some more disposable income, creatine might be something you look at. All right, number 4, moving along here. So, is it possible to get strong and gain muscle while keeping my testosterone levels natural, or do most guys eventually need TRT to stay in the fight? So, there's a lot in this question that shows me the lack of understanding of what TRT is. So when I read this, I kind of think they think they mean steroids, like super physiological levels of testosterone. TRT is actually just testosterone replacement therapy. So let's say, I go in and I got my testosterone checked, and this is kind of where I run naturally, is right around that, 900 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, which is at the very, very high end of the natural curve. If I was to go on TRT, because let's say I'm getting older and my levels are dropping, the doctor would only give me enough testosterone to bring me back up to where I normally am, right, within that physiological range. So technically, you're still natural, meaning you're not playing with something that you don't already have. So if we think in that context, yeah, 1,000%, you can absolutely maintain. You can even make really good muscular gains, natural, and like we kind of talked about last week. If you fix diet, lifestyle, training, like those big levers, sometimes TRT isn't even needed to keep you in that natural range. But you absolutely can make strength gains with or without TRT, providing that you're doing the other things correctly. But if we compare that to the type of gains you would make being at the enhanced side of things, meaning you're taking more testosterone, more anabolics than your body would naturally produce, it's not even close. It's not even close. And full transparency, I've played on both sides of the aisle, and it's not even close. Like you're talking like JV to not even varsity, but now you're looking at like D1 college or even pro. Like it's a huge difference between the two. And I can dive into that in a different video, but like don't expect to have the same response to training, to nutrition, to all of this stuff when you're comparing yourself to an enhanced person, meaning they're taking super physiological doses of testosterone. But if you look at yourself versus, what you normally can do when your hormones are optimized, that's a very good comparison. And just so you guys know, a really awesome year for a natural athlete, especially in the beginning of their lifting journey. I mean, if you're gaining like 5 to 10 pounds of muscle per year, you're rocking it. Even an enhanced person, if they're getting like 10 to 15, and this is really like, muscle does not come on very fast. Like a really good month, you might gain a pound or 2 of actual muscle. And that's if you're checking all the boxes correctly and on stuff. So like, it's not something that's gonna happen fast. If it's a natural, we're talking about like months and months and months to gain a couple pounds of actual muscle tissue. So this is where I want to frame the mindset. If you're trying to gain muscle, to not focus on the scale, focus on the lifestyle habits, meaning the nutrition, the rest, the training, all of that stuff. Make sure that's all dialed in and focus on just falling in love with that process, because it takes so long to actually accrue tissue that if you're just simply focused on the outcome, most people will fizzle out. So yeah, long-winded answer to say you can absolutely still make gains without being on TRT. All right, number 5. Why does it feel like the harder I push in the gym, the more run down I get? Isn't getting stronger supposed to make me feel stronger too? Well, yes, it will long-term, 1,000%. But this is kind of one of those. Okay, I'll give you a really good analogy. So if you look at my hands, like they're pretty calloused up, right? That didn't happen on accident. That didn't happen just because I'm existing. That happened because I used to work a lot of construction. Now I handle a lot of iron in the gym. When I first started, my hands were soft like silk. And when I first started working with my hands, especially growing up working construction, I would get blisters, right? I would work with my hands. I raked a lot. I worked on an asphalt crew. I raked a lot. I shoveled a lot. I did a lot of hard manual labor, and I would have blisters like all over my hands. So my hands hurt. They didn't feel good. But when I allowed them enough time to rest and recover, that skin grew back. But not only did it grow back, it grew back with extra layers. And over time, those extra layers became a callus, which were meant to protect me from the stress that I was putting them under at work, right? Muscles are very much the same way. It's very much a biological response to stress. So when you go in the gym and you push yourself beyond what your body is normal, like your normal capacity to recover from is, you will feel broken, like not necessarily broken, but beat down. Like you're just gonna be sore, you're gonna be tired. A lot of things that will happen just as a response to the stress that you put your body under. Well, here's the kicker. If all we do is go back and keep applying the same or more stress to the system without allowing our body enough time to recover, then adapt, the actual physiological like cycle is called the SRA curve, which stands for stimulus, meaning that's your training. And your stimulus is here, right? When you hit a hard stimulus, we'll just use energy as the metric here. Your energy's gonna fall, right? Now we need a period of time for it to come back up to the R part, which is the recovery, right? So stimulus, the recovery brings it back to baseline. That's filling the ditch that you just dug. And then you need another little bit of time for it to super compensate, meaning adapt, which is that callus, that extra layer of skin, in this case, the extra layer of muscle, to be more robust and have the ability to handle the stress that you're throwing at it. Now, we need to do that within every single week of training. So this is why you see splits. So if I'm doing chest on Monday, right? It's International Chest Day. Mine's on Tuesday because I'm a rebel. But say chest on Monday, you need enough time for your chest, your shoulders, probably a little bit of your triceps, to not only recover from that training session, but adapt to that training session before you hit it again. But we're doing that simultaneously with every part of our body. You know, chest on Mondays, back on Tuesdays, you know, arms on Wednesdays, legs on Thursdays, etc. Right? So when I hear this from someone, I think there's an imbalance between how hard you're pushing and how hard you're recovering. So I would look at either bringing down the total work that you're doing in the gym, still focusing really hard, but maybe bringing down the total volume or the total work sets, or increasing the recovery time before you hit it again. That's what I would think of. Or even totally shortening the amount of training days you do in the gym. Some of my best gains came from 4 days a week in the gym, meaning I'm Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday are off. So I'm giving my body adequate time to recover and adapt before hitting those muscles again. So you can kind of look at it different ways. Obviously, if specific questions, drop them below. More than happy to kind of walk you through what that might look like for you. We all have very much inter-individuality when it comes to a recovery capacity. That's actually a genetic trait. One of the things, if you watch Ronnie Coleman train, he trained everything hard and heavy and freaking nasty twice a week. So he did push, pull, legs, Monday through Saturday. And he was deadlifting 800 pounds for reps. He was just tearing it up. And in 3 days, he was ready to go again. But that is a God-given recovery, like genetic gift that most of us do not have. I know I don't. I train 5 days a week, and specifically my split right now would be I actually do like a back day on Monday. I do a chest and shoulder day on Tuesday. Wednesday is a leg day. Thursday I take off. Friday I'm doing another shoulder and chest day because that's kind of my weak areas. And then Saturday I do arms as a bro pump day. So really I'm only hitting one muscle group twice per week. The rest of them, it's just a once a week cadence. Because I found that if I raise anything higher than that, if I focus on hitting more than one to two muscle groups more than once a week, I just can't recover from it. I actually get worse. And it does the same to me. It beats me down. I have so much fatigue and eventually I get sick or injured. So just so you know, that's the end of that training when you keep pushing it. Is sickness is normally what happens for most people. They get an illness, normally an infection. A lot of upper respiratory stuff is what I see. Or they tweak something, you know, whether you get a little ping in the shoulder, a pop in the pec. If it's leg stuff, you might get, knee tendonitis, something like that. So always be wary of your training intensity, volume, frequency, and your recovery. You need to balance all of those together. All right. I know I said 5 questions, but we're going to do a couple rapid fire funny ones that my wife threw one at me, but a client of mine also threw one at me. So I'm going to give a couple of these a spin today. So bonus question number 1. What's the most ridiculous thing you've ever eaten during a bulk? Oh boy, this was the wife question. So I wish I could do this one again, honestly. It was really good. So creature of habit, I do everything very monotonously. Back in my dreamer bulk days where I was just trying to gain weight for the sake of weight, my last meal before I went to bed was, if you remember, I think they still sell it, it's the Breyer's Carb Conscious ice cream. Right, and I was like, oh, I don't want carbs before bed because the carb, gnomes are gonna come out and just store all his body fat. I didn't look at the calories or, mind you, I'm like 20, 21 years old. I would do half a tub, and these are the pints, right? Half a tub of that in a big ass bowl of vanilla Breyer's Carb Conscious ice cream. Then I would put on 3 scoops of chocolate whey protein. I would drizzle it with just a touch of almond milk, unsweetened, because I'm watching carbs. And then I would put on probably 2 heaping spoonfuls of all natural peanut butter. Stir that shit together so it made like this really frothy, like awesome, like it actually still was hard like ice cream, but it was more like soft serve. And I would eat that every night before I went to bed. Recently I did a calorie, like just count on what that was. it's like 1,300 calories before bed. And I want to say like at least 60 or 70 of those were dietary fat. So would I do it again? No, because I'd get divorced, because I would fart so much that my wife would leave me and I would be sad, and I would also be fat because that's way too much for my body to handle before bed. All right, second bonus question. If someone followed you around the gym with a hidden camera, what's the one training habit you'd hope they never caught you doing? Okay, I have a lot of these, so I'm sure you've seen them if you're watching my stuff. So one thing I do a lot is I have what I've coined as training Tourette's. I always have, big, Princess Leia headphones on, and I'm always cranking. I call it my angry white boy music. And especially before like heavy sets of like deadlifts, squats, presses, rows, things where I really got to get amped up, I talk to myself. But on the outside, if you've ever heard someone talk to themselves, and it's always short, like really succinct sentences like, come on, fucking bitch, let's go. And I would like just talk to myself and just like cuss randomly. And I already do have like kind of a potty mouth. I think it's probably the construction worker in me. But yeah, I would just like curse randomly, like just like have Tourette's. And my wife, what the fuck are you talking about? You look like such a spaz. Like you're just this calm, happy guy. Then all of a sudden you start training. People are like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? Is he gonna murder me and my whole family? But she's like, it's just funny. And it's like, I want to try to stop that. So if I have headphones on, the Tourette's comes out. But if I don't train with headphones on, the Tourette's doesn't come out, because when it does, I'm like, ooh, that's bad. I don't think I want that. I hope nobody saw that. So that's the habit that I hope nobody saw. But now y'all did. So either way, that's it for the questions today. Hope you guys have an awesome, awesome week. And make sure to, again, drop your questions below. Follow us on Instagram at FitCoupleU. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe on this page, and tell your friends. We're trying to reach as many Christian men as we can. And every like, subscription, comment, all that stuff, it always helps. So thank you guys super much, if that's a word. See you next week.